Good evening and welcome to another special edition of Parrot Show. Tonight I have with me Mrs. Olubunmi Salako. Mrs. Salako is the mother of Miss Nigerian Ireland 2009, Emanuela Salako. She's an educationist and she is an author. Most importantly, she is a politician. She is the chairman, Action Congress of Nigeria Ireland Chapter. Mrs. Olubunmi Salako, you're welcome to Parrot Show.
Thank you very much, Peter.
It's nice to have you tonight.
I feel honored to be here.
First and foremost, could you tell the viewers what you do?
Well, I'm an author. I wrote children's books, and I'm a teacher, and I have an educational consultancy here in Ireland. Also, I'm a politician. I'm the chairman of Action Congress of Nigeria Ireland Chapter.
I know.
And I'm a mother.
I know you're still working at the moment.
Yes.
So let's start with that. Where do you work?
I work at St. Joseph's National School in Dundalk.
What do you do there?
I'm involved with a literacy project that we started about 7 years ago in the school. And at the moment, I saw the potential of this program, and I see how it has helped a lot of children, especially children from non-English background. And I've seen the progression from when they come in September and how well they are doing in June at the end of the school year. And I thought it's a brilliant project, so I have taken it to Nigeria.
Are you taking it to Nigeria?
Yes, I have. I did that in February this year.
And since when have you been involved with this project in Ireland?
Yeah, I started with them at the inception. That was 7 years ago.
Oh, 7 years ago.
7 years ago.
What would be the progress that you would have seen?
Yeah, I have seen the program developed, as, in 4 stages. We've looked at the phonics, which is the sound in English. We've looked at comprehension, how to teach comprehension. We've looked at how to teach reading. And we've looked at how to teach writing. At the moment in the school, we are using writing. And you will see a 3rd class child, 9-year-old, writing reports on their own. All you need to do is to give them topics and the way to go about it. And you see them producing brilliant reports at that level. Even in junior infant, 5-year-old, and senior infant, they are writing reports.
This very project would be, directed at which segment of the society now?
It's at the primary school level at the moment. But we've seen schools around the country coming down to the school to learn how to implement it in their own schools as well. And it's something that is adaptable even at the secondary school level.
And what did you call the name of the project again?
It's a literacy project.
A literacy project.
It's a literacy project.
And would it be for the immigrants who come to Ireland to study or for everybody?
It's for everybody, all children in school. It's not for immigrants alone. It's for all children. We've seen Irish kids who are dyslexic, that cannot read or write, and the program has helped them as well. We've seen Eastern European children who don't have a word of English coming into school, progressing from September to June, and they're able to speak very well and write.
Okay.
So it's very, it's a very good program.
And it's going, like you said, it's going national now. Other schools are coming to.
Other schools, yeah. It's been a gradual
process, yeah.
It's been very gradual, but the Department of Education here have come to assess it, and they wrote a report on it in one of their publications. Yeah. So it's something that all other schools are getting awareness of, and they're coming down to the school to learn how to implement it in their own schools.
Yeah, well, how did you come about doing it? How did your school come about doing it 7 years ago? Who came up with the idea? And
yes,
how did you get yourself involved in it?
Yes, we have an assistant principal in the school who has a doctorate degree in English, and she's the head of department of English. So she's the one that started the project. I think it's part of our, PhD program. So she started it, and she invited other teachers who have English background, and they sat down and developed it. And since then, we've been doing it in phases. And the way it goes is, in the classroom we have 4 specific stations in the classroom where children work at. It's a 48-minute lesson. And the stations are the reading station. The reading station is in 2. The guided reading, where you read to teacher, and teacher listens and corrects your mistakes. We have the library, where the children will go and read whatever, or is of interest to them. We have the listening station, where children listen to audiobooks. Then we have the word detective station. The word detective station is where I will work, and that is a place where children, interact with words and how word works. So that, those are the stations, and children spend 12 minutes each at each station. That is why we have 48 minutes. We train them to know where they go, where to go, what they do, because there's a captain at each station. So the captain gives out whatever material is needed, and the children know what to do. So it's been so successful. It's gone so smoothly ever since we started it.
The school is happy with it. You are happy with it, and you're seeing the children progress with it.
Yes, and the Department of Education is happy with it as well.
Yeah, that's good to know. And then you were talking about, is something that could be applied, can also be used in the secondary school.
Yes.
How would they do that?
It could be used. It's just, setting up, knowing how to use the station, teachers setting it up, and teaching the children to use it appropriately. So it's just going to be adapted to their level. That's just the way to do it. And they just move around like we do and get their work done.
Okay.
It's an additional lesson, so to say, to their, to the curriculum. And the beauty of it, is that it's an integrated approach to teaching, because all other subjects come into it.
Yes. Yeah, that's good. And then you talked about, taking the project to Nigeria.
Yes.
Could you tell us a bit about it?
Because I am, I have a consultancy here. I think, it's a good idea if I introduce it in Nigeria as well. So I spoke to a friend, and we came into partnership. We launched it in February, and there was a very positive response from all stakeholders, because we have a representative from states, from federal, and from the private sectors as well.
So how is it going to work in Nigeria?
We intend to, to train teachers first on how to use the project. At the moment, we are working on leveling our books, because you have to level the books to meet the needs of the children you are targeting. We want to target primaries 1 and 2, at the initial stage. Then we spread it to primary 6. But right now we are targeting 1 and 2. So our training is going to go to, is going to be for teachers in primaries 1 and 2, and we're going to do it in phases over the summer.
So it's going to be first and foremost for the teachers.
For the teachers.
Yeah.
For the teachers and for the trainers.
Yeah, training the trainers.
Yes, because we want to develop people who will be able to, to do the training on ground, instead of bringing in expatriate all the time. But my partner here is going to kick off the training. Then we train the trainers over the summer. Then we'll be able to follow it up. And the beauty of it again is this is something that is measurable. You can measure the achievements over time.
It can be seen.
Yes, it can be seen.
Yeah, that's good.
We're going to do the evaluation apart from the training. We will follow on the teachers and do the evaluation.
Yeah. That's very good, because I think there's this perception in Nigeria now that the standard of education has fallen so low. And a lot of people say that it's not actually, it does not actually have to do with the students alone, but rather with the teachers.
Yes.
And a system like this would tend to brighten up the teachers and challenge them
Exactly.
on how to actually teach the children.
Yes, that's our aim, to change the perception of teachers that you have to, to stick to a method of teaching. We want them to know that you can help the children to go at their own pace, to dictate, to dictate their learning pace, and to discover themselves, rather than using the old method, the lecturing method that we're all used to. The banking system where you just pour whatever you know on the child. Coming into Ireland, I discovered that when you discover learning yourself, it stays with you, rather than somebody teaching you everything. The role of the teacher should be facilitating learning, not teaching per se. Facilitate, help the child to discover themselves. When they do that, it stays with them, they understand it, and they are able to reproduce because it's something they discover themselves. So this is what we are trying to do, to build the capacity of teachers to be able to do this, to help the children. So, that's the aim of this program.
Well, I certainly hope that the stakeholders, like you said, would be the power that be that would be able to influence the project, and that they are being sincere with it, because the state of education in Nigeria now is in a deplorable situation. The idea that everybody wants to send their children abroad to go to school, I don't think is the best. If they say that education is fundamental, and the basic education from the primary to the secondary is the most important.
Yes.
But that's not the situation in Nigeria anymore.
Yes.
And maybe we need innovations like this to come on board, to like reawake that spirit and the vision that all is not well.
Yes.
Yeah. And then you wrote a book.
Yes, I did.
Yeah. How did that? Tell us a little bit about your book.
Yes, it all started with this project that I've been describing. When we were trying to level the books that we're going to use for the project, I discovered that all the African tales that I grew up with were not part of what were being processed as books to be used. Very few African storybooks that were in the library, in the school library, were written by foreigners. And I believe that nobody can tell our tales like ourselves.
Better than we do.
Yes. So I said, I'm going to just throw in a bit so that even the children in the school will be able to learn from our culture, from our background, because I believe that when people listen to your story, they understand you better. And I believe that these stories will promote dialogue among children, Irish, Africans, children from all over the world, that it will promote dialogue. So I thought I should, just sit down and do something in that area. And luckily for me, the lady, Dr. Brady, that started this project, actually encouraged me to do it. So I started writing it. It took me about 2-3 years to come up with one. It's not an easy thing. So eventually, the first publication was done by the school themselves, and we launched it and we put it in all the classrooms and in all our book baskets, and children were reading it until I was able to get funding from the Department of Integration under the Department of Justice.
Yeah.
So after that publication, I was now able to send it to all the libraries all over Ireland and into some schools that I was able to get in touch with. So it's something that is in the market, everywhere in schools and libraries that people can go and get it. Then last 2 years, I thought, well, even though in Nigeria there are all these books there's still market for it. So I sent it out to Evans Publishers. And luckily for me, it was at the right time they wanted to start publishing stories like that. So mine was the first they took up. And they have published one with a workbook But instead of calling it Tales by Moonlight, African Stories for Children, that I called it here, I called it the Twilight Tales in Nigeria.
Okay.
Yes.
The Twilight Tales in Nigeria. Is that the one in Nigeria?
Yeah, that's the one in Nigeria.
Okay. Olurumbi and other stories. The Twilight Tales in Nigeria. You know, ladies and gentlemen, that's a book by Mrs. Olubunmi Salako. In Ireland, actually, she called it Tale by Moonlight, and this is the Nigerian version. And it's all about stories for children. So if you are interested in getting books for your children, talking to parents in diaspora now, you can get in touch with Mrs. Olubunmi Salako, or you can get in touch with her through Parrot Show. Send us an email or whatever about wanting to get in touch with Mrs. Olubunmi Salako, and we gladly do that. It's a way of getting African children in diaspora back to their country, even without being there. At least when they read the stories about Africa, they like what you have done is you set them thinking about their fatherland. And it's most important that children are introduced to reading books like this, because it has to do with who we are as Africans. Okay, Madam, now, how would you assess the success of the books since you've written them?
Oh, well, I think, if I'm not blowing my trumpet, it has promoted dialogue, among children. And a lot of schools have used it as intercultural, toolkit in their schools, and those who are working with young people in youth groups, they've used it. And I've had a lot of feedback from everyone that has used it, that they like it, and that I should do more. So I'll say successful.
Yeah.
I just thank God for that.
I know, because I think more needs to be done. Because sometimes we sit down and we think about the children who are being born in diaspora, African children who are born in diaspora, and not until they go to Nigeria, they really don't know anything about Africa.
Yes.
So books like this, we tell them stories about Africa, and they would be interested to really go to Africa and find out, because what they see is Mickey Mouse and Disney World and all.
Exactly.
And that's not all that there is as per children's program. Africa is rich, is endowed with children's stories, is endowed with stories that the children we are supposed to know about. But unfortunately, because we are not at home, they are not opportune to. But since you have taken that step now, it's very good, and I think everybody should support the idea and look out for this book, Tales by Moonlight, African Stories for Children, if you're in Ireland. But even if you live in another country, like I said before, you can still order for these books. They are available, you can get them. Or when you go to Nigeria, you can look for the Twilight Tales. You can also get them from there. Or if you're following us on Facebook or on YouTube, videos like this will be there on Parrot Productions. And you can, if you miss this very interview on TV, on YouTube and Facebook, you can get the details from there, and then get in touch with Mrs. Olubunmi Salako. Okay, Madam, we've talked about your books now. We've talked about your the illiteracy project, which are educational.
Yes.
And they are fundamental. They are most important to bringing up the children of tomorrow.
Yes.
Because what is important now is actually the children of tomorrow. Because a lot with the societal challenges at the moment, the economic reality and all, sometimes we tend to forget what is important in the society, which is that education, the fundamental education. And I think that's what you people are doing. And I must commend you for it.
Thank you.
But now, as for the children, the teenagers who are growing from that infancy into adulthood, is another challenge. And I want to ask you, being a mother and being someone who is in the educational field, that Are you satisfied with the way things are going, especially with African children in diaspora? You've seen the situation in London, the riot that happened last year, and you see what tend to be happening with the children in Ireland, the teenagers in Ireland. Would you say that there's a problem here?
Well, I'll first say that, a good number of our children are doing very well. And I must, commend them, sorry. I must commend them. Because I happen to interact with a lot of them. And I interview them, ask them what they're doing, and I'm happy with a lot of them. Having said that, there are cases that will make your heart bleed as a mom or as a parent. And I believe, that as parents, we must not shy away from our responsibilities when we are training our children. Everything is in God's hand, really, the training of children. But He has given us responsibility here on earth to carry out. And I believe that He's going to ask, whenever He's going to ask us about those kids, what did you do with them? That is why we should not shirk in our responsibility. And because of that, I have, part of what I do is to encourage parents through parenting courses, which I do in schools. I meet with the parents of children, both Irish and African, wherever you come from, as long as you're a parent in a school. I meet with them and I do sessions with them to tell them, the way to actually discipline children. We don't say, punish, because that is, is a negative connotation. So we use, when we're talking of training methods to use, we use sanctions and reward. And as parents, I believe that we should be role model first to our children, because what we don't want to see in them, we should not do as well. In my course of doing this, I've come across a lot of parents who have problems raising their kids, and social worker had to come in. So what I do in that sense is to actually give them the practical of how to go about this. I tell them the way it is done in schools, because corporal punishment is not part of the school system here, and a lot of Africans still use it. Instead of corporal punishment, what is used in school is what I mentioned as sanction and reward. And we thrive as much as possible to catch children doing well, rather than complaining on what they did wrong. It's like a child does something that makes you happy. Instead of just ignoring it, you acknowledge it right there and then. So you are reinforcing that good behavior in that child. So also, if you, talk more of the bad behavior, you are reinforcing the bad behavior. So it's better to reinforce the positive behavior rather than the negative one. So these are the rudiments of the, training that I give to parents who are having problems with their children. And a lot of people have come back to me with a positive report that I tried what you said and it's good and this and that. A practical example I can give was of an Irish parent who find it difficult to get a particular child to sit down to dinner. That's the only meal they have together as a family. And that is a period of tantrums for the child. And everybody will end up not enjoying their meal. I said, okay. Because it wouldn't eat this, it wouldn't, very choosy when it comes to food. I just said to them, look at whatever the child loves and use it as incentive. If it's chocolate that the child loves, because they say it will eat chocolate and will be fine, okay, you have to withdraw that gradually and let him eat the real meal. If you eat your real meal, I'll give you a bar of chocolate. So you'll be withdrawing it gradually until the child is able to settle down to real meals. And they came back to me and said, that really worked. That really worked. The child is eating vegetables that he will never eat. He's eating fruits. So it's less of chocolate, less of sugary things, and he's really eating good meals now.
That's very good. I mean, listening to you now, I think more of parenting courses should be done to parents, because what we've actually spoken of now is ways of putting children on the right path.
Yes.
But at the same time, parents who are not on the right path and cannot actually put their children on the right path.
No.
So we also need courses for parents.
Yes. And what I always say to them before I start my session is that when I came into Ireland, the first thing I did was a parenting course. I compared what I had from home and what is obtainable here. I took the values from the two and I merged it. And that has really worked for me personally as a mother. And it actually made my job as a mother easier. Apart from the fact that I put these children in the way of the Lord. What I learned from the parenting course made it so easy for me. It's just telling them, this is what happens if you go against the law. Set boundaries for them. If you do what is right, this is the reward. If you do what is wrong, these are the consequences. And I make sure that I carry out to the letter whatever consequence I've attached to any behavior that I don't approve of. So it's like, there's no shouting, no fighting. Just choose what you want.
You set the boundaries.
I set the boundary. Do what you want, because if you don't set boundaries for these children, they will stretch you out. They will. You have to let them know that you are the authority that they need. And for you to be in authority, you must give them boundaries, and you must be very fair in carrying out whatever consequence or reward. If it's reward, make sure you do it. You give it to them. And if it's consequences, carry it out to the letter. Then they'll know you are not joking. You mean business. This is what, and it's very, very important to catch them young. If you leave it too late, it gets out of hand. And that is why you have crisis.
I hope the parents are listening to you and taking cues from what you're saying. Briefly, viewers, don't go away. When we come back, we will come back with Mrs. Olubunmi Salako, and we will be talking about the state of the nation, Nigeria.